Brandy's my neighbor. You can even see my house in some of those. I lived at the time in Beacon. I've since moved to Columbia, Missouri to teach at AJ's alma mater at the University of Missouri. And I was thrilled to leave because I fucking hated Beacon, as you might be able to tell from all the B-roll I chose to show. But actually going into actress, I was hesitant to make a film about someone I was close to because I had made Fake It So Real, which is playing tomorrow, is about one of the wrestlers in the group is my cousin. He's one of the main characters. And then before that, I made a film Katie with an I, which is about my half sister as she's graduating high school. To back up even further, I have a crazy, crazy, crazy family, and in fact, like so crazy that like I just thought when I was 20 years old and I thought I want to make movies, I thought making films about people close to me would be too easy, and so I was like, don't do that because it's just too easy, and because you can't,
Well, often they're not very good.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know. Well, I never had an idea that I'd make bad movies, of course. But you guys are all saying you just did. But yeah. So I didn't even know. And in fact, I made my first film, which was a much different kind of talking head sort of film called Owning the Weather about the climate change and people trying to control the weather and whatever. It was basically like I don't want to do that kind of movie. I don't know how I ended up making a movie that I wasn't exactly proud of in some ways. But Katie was graduating from high school. I talked to Sean Price Williams, who shot some of the best sequences in this movie, and we've worked a bunch together. And I said, let's just go down and film my sister for 2 days. And he's like, sure, whatever, And I didn't know that was even going to be a movie. And it turned out to be, it was nominated for awards, and barely was a movie, but it got nominated for awards, and people saw it, a few people saw it. And then, so I was like, okay, well, shit, I just did the thing that I didn't mean to do, which is make a film. And for that, the strategy there was just stay out of the way. Like, I can't film my own sister. I have, even though I did end up filming some of that film, I had to, like, just stay out of the way, meaning, like, be as far away from Sean doing the thing. And in fact, for a while, Sean was co-directing the film, but he ended up not wanting to take the co-director credit, essentially. And then the Fake It So Real, it was, we'll talk about this tomorrow if you come, but wrestlers are weird. They don't let you film. Even small town wrestlers in Lincolnton, North Carolina didn't want to let you film. My cousin was the way in, and I had the same thought. Was like, well, I've already made a film about my family. Here I go exploiting them again. And that way it was just, he was a small part of a bigger thing. But I did have this reservation when I started filming Brandy. Maybe I don't want to be that because one of the first things I said to Brandy was, this process is going to be very strange for you. I don't know where it's going to end up. We started filming sort of not knowing anything. I had no idea that she was sort of dealing with some of the things that she was dealing with. I sensed as her friend that she was going through something, and I showed her those other two films, and I said, look, like these are my family, like, and I kind of took care of them, and I think seeing the other two films actually is what helped Brandy say yes, in a way. So I don't know.
How'd you get over it yourself? Like you had to get to a thing where you're like, I don't necessarily want to do another thing about someone close to me. Because I can say that people who live in Los Angeles, all of us have a Brandy who lives on our street.
In fact,
it's like, the person who was on the half season of ER, like they live in the apartment down the hall.
Well, in Beacon, there's only one Brandy. That might be in Hollywood, she might be one of a million, but there's only one Brandy in Beacon. It's totally economic. It was basically like Fake It So Real and Katie with an I got out there enough that they played in 3 cities or whatever. The movie made in 2012 is just going to get its LA premiere tomorrow. It tells you how we did, right? And I was just sort of like, look, I edit films for a living too. I edit fiction and documentary films, and I was just saying, basically, I could sort of go into the process of, trying to raise money and sort of based on these films that very few people have seen, or I can do what I really like to do, which is pick up the camera and go do something. And oftentimes you have to do something with something that's intimate. And the justification for me was Cassavetes. It was Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins and their collaborations. And because they made films in their homes. They made Love Streams was made in Love Streams is one of my favorite films of all time. Jenna Rollins and John Cassavetes were married, and they made this masterpiece of grown-up feelings. And that's what I kind of told Brandy. I was like, I even talked about this with her. I was like, I don't even know if I want to do a film about someone so close to me. But the truth is these are grown-up things you're dealing with, and I'm a grown-up and I'm dealing with my own shit. Let's just do it, And so that was the thing.
When you start shooting, though, do you have a sense where you're like, well, I'll shoot for a few days, and I'll see if it is anything, or have you ever had a false start, or do you just once you're in, I'm gonna figure out the way into it?
I couldn't afford a false start here. So, but having said that, the meaning what I meant is I needed to make a film. It was kind of time, and I was too busy, and also have 2 young children myself, and I wasn't leaving home that often. So it was almost like I got to just do this. But the original idea of the movie was, I basically Brandy and I knew each other as parent friends, which if you have children, it's a very specific kind of friendship where it's we only sort of know each other through these little people, and we have children the same age. And I saw Brandy at a birthday party, and what turns out it was at the very beginning of the process of this sort of awakening that she had, which I ended up documenting. And I just noticed there was something different, and I just thought, okay, maybe there's a way in here. And the previous 2 films I've been interested in this idea of performance and nonfiction and what that meant, and I'd written about it a little bit. And so the original idea was, I know that if I put a camera on Brandy, who is an actor, and as she says herself, I wish she was here to say it herself, but she says herself, I'm not acting theatrical, I am theatrical. It's a sort of different concept. Many people in the audience know what I'm talking about, actors, And I just thought, if I filmed her routine as a mother, there might be some interesting experimental thing where you film a sort of observational documentary with an actor, and she's doing the same routines over and over again. And maybe there's going to be some sort of meaning that comes out of that routine film. So it was really a different thing. And in fact, the original was that was going to be her scenes, but it was going to be a triptych about actors, and Kate Lynn Shiel, who ended up starring in Kate Plays Christine, was going to be in it, and then I was going to find some famous old actor who could deliver some monologue about being older and tossed aside, or I love my life as an old, whatever she wanted to say. And so, but gradually the movie sort of evolved into this thing. One day we were driving the city. I thought we were filming some nice shots of Brandy having fun with people, and she said, "Yeah, I asked him to move out," and I just said, "Okay, well, movie's over." I can't film this movie anymore, obviously, and slowly we convinced each other that we should keep going.
So at what point do you say, okay, I'm not just doing, Cassavetes was raw. It was filmed in their place, and it felt like you're there with them because the camera's moving and the sound is not always, completely on point. But what you end up creating are these dream sequences in a way, and it takes on a sort of romantic overall quality, both in terms of how it's shot and in terms of how Brandy presents herself. So is there a moment within the process where you say, hey, Brandy, this is becoming a new thing, and now you're leaving your husband, and you're starting to have this affair, and the film needs to become a new thing, and therefore we need to structure how we present it in a different way?
Well, first thing I'll say is some of the best dream sequences are the sequence that you shot, which is the credit sequence in Los Angeles, which totally nailed exactly what we were trying to pull off in our stuff too. So, just kudos for the movie. We had no idea how the movie would end, and I basically said, hey, AJ, Brandy's going to be here in California. Want to shoot some stuff? And we produced that sequence, which totally takes it into fantasy land and also totally real and grounded. But yeah, I think there was a point, and I don't know what it was, and it was a really weird moment actually, and it all has to do with Sean Price Williams, who shot just a few things. I basically had him come up. He owed me a birthday present, one free day of filming that he gave me for my 37th birthday or something.
Oh, aren't DPs the best?
Yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna fucking use that, and I pinned it.
Was it like a little coupon?
It was literally handwritten on a yellow piece of paper, and he totally forgot that he gave it to me.
Was that yellow piece of paper a Post-it note?
No, it was like a ripped up lined piece of paper.
Like legal pad.
Yeah, I still have it. If you want me to take a picture, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, put it online, please.
Yeah. And so I was like, remember that present? And he was like, no, I don't remember that present. And eventually he came up. And so we were just like, the idea really was, okay, I don't really know where this thing's going to go by that point at all. It was like halfway through the process. But I have Sean here. We might as well film some stuff. And I'd been filming all the slow motion sequences are shot slow motion. And there was one moment where when Tim walks in and she's doing her makeup and she makes this face and I just was almost accidentally filming slow motion. We were in the middle of doing something else and we didn't know Tim was coming home. I set the camera up on the counter, push record as she was I just liked the framing of the way she was doing that. You might remember it from very early in the movie. And then he came in and then I went back and looked at the footage and I was like, that's the fucking movie right there. Like that is the extension of something real into something melodramatic and fantastic. And the way it brought forward what I thought was the shit inside of her gut that she didn't even know about yet, and that I didn't even know about yet. So that had happened, and then I said, okay, so let's explore that a little bit more. And so that's when Sean got the walking around the shot, and she takes the coat hanger. Literally, the only direction there was, I don't know, just walk around the house. And Stella came down and handed her a coat hanger, and she did the thing that she does when she gets any object. She acts theatrical. And then the red dress thing was basically, I noticed that the set design on her own house. I mean, you can't film we couldn't film this film in my house because my house is not set designed. Like it looks like shit. Like it's like just like junk everywhere, and it's like children. Brandy, set designs her life in some ways, and so I've noticed the poinsettias and like the little red chair and the fact that I was like, do you have anything red or something? Somehow she just came down in this red dress, and we said, let's film a slow motion sequence. So it was organic. Once I had the material, that was when I said, oh, this is Douglas Sirk documentary. And for me, Douglas Sirk is a very specific thing. Melodrama is you're aware of the artifice, you're aware of the contrivance, you're aware of the irony, and somehow it pushes way past irony to make you feel something. So that felt liberating.
And that lends itself completely to the things that you're interested in terms of performance and how performance is in documentary, right? Like I think what you were writing about and the things you were talking about was this idea of the second you put a camera on someone, you have to wonder whether the person is being or performing in terms of what you see.
Yeah, my first idea that I ever felt good about was saying that Husbands, the Cassavetes film, was a melodrama. And my film teacher being like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I wrote like a 30-page paper or something like explaining exactly what I meant by that. And I felt like it was a good idea, like because it was just a different kind of melodrama. And I think I would say, extending that, I think documentaries are often melodramas because when we tend to edit them and shoot them as if they're authentic slices of life, when in fact they're melodramas of persona. Like you get something like Caucus, like it is. There's a moment where Rick Santorum in your film Caucus is walking up a hill, and he's aware of the camera, but he's still in his moment. He's in an election. He's about to, he's a very complex character, obviously, and the way the shot comes, the way he's aware of himself. There's all sorts of layers of reality that are going on there. It's performance, it's authentic, it's something else, right? And I think that's underexplored in documentary. I think it's been explored. I mean, Portrait of Jason, and there's great movies throughout history that have explored that line. But I think some of the questions that we have, like, in Actress, one of the ideas is I want to put all the questions that you already have. Things like, why the fuck is he filming her? Is this? I really like the idea that some people think like, oh, she only did this for an acting reel, or that somehow I instigated the whole thing, which in some ways the camera did contribute in instigating the whole thing. I want to take that stuff rather than how most documentaries want to hide their ethical problems. I want to make that part of the drama and use that to suck you in a little bit, so that you're wondering, shit, is this going to fall apart? Like, at what point is this going to break in this way or the other? And for me, that pays off, I think, with the image of her face. And the way you've been hopefully reading into her performance, reading into my presence and the camera's presence and all these things. You read in, and hopefully, if the film works for you, that reading in, that obsessive reading in that I'm asking you to do throughout the movie is paid off in some way, where you don't know how to really react to her face being bruised, and maybe then it says something about how you felt about her, and maybe how you feel about yourself. I don't know.
Well, another thing that the documentaries sometimes will hide is when specifically a main protagonist character is and can be unlikable. Like you'll take moments and you'll be like, oh well, I don't want to use that because I want the audience to feel good about this person. This is who they're investing all their time in. And I actually talked to Brandy a bit about this, which is she decides to break up her family in the film, and we don't get to meet the man who she does that for, because at the time he was also still in a relationship. So there's this she sets herself up in a scenario where I'm sure people have different, and we'll go to the audience shortly, but people have different feelings about how they react to Brandy as to whether they like her or they don't like her, or they like certain pieces about her. How, as an editor, how do you deal with that?
I would say first that likability is so overrated in movies, I think. And the reason why documentary likability is so important is because you're working with a subject, and that is a fragile, very fucked up thing, period. The thing about Brandy is she just doesn't give a fuck. Like Brandy is, well, I could say the one extreme is that one of her best friends, I remember after seeing the film, he said, oh, well, you didn't even capture the monster. And I was like, oh, I thought I did capture the monster. And he was like, no, you know it. You know you didn't. And Brandy said, you know you didn't, Robert. I mean, like, but she's very aware of herself, and she doesn't care. Like she doesn't want to rub people the wrong way or something, but she's also, she's the kind of person who you get in a fight with, and you are so furious about how overreacting she is. And then the main thing you're furious about is that she's fucking right about it. And like, she's right about people talking down to her, and she's right about people misunderstanding her, and she's right about people being sexist towards her. And for me, that was exciting, because that meant that the thing that most documentary filmmakers have to worry about, I didn't have to worry about. We dove in together, and she was like, you're gonna show me for what I am, and like, I trust you, and we're gonna do it. And I think, I think she's proud of how she's portrayed. I think she knows it's complex, but she's like, look, fucking life is complex. My life is my problem. Your problem is that you think that there's a problem. This is like, she literally would say things like, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Why should I feel bad about what I'm doing? Like, and although that can rub people the wrong way, it's obviously true. Furthermore, if the film is ultimately about looking at a woman and looking at how that woman is trapped in roles, the role of being likable is something that a lot of women deal with all the time. And the way you have to be, the way you have to behave, the way you have to sort of control your sexuality, the way you have to define yourself as a mother. We would go out to bars, and we saw this happen again and again. And on the festival circuit, when we were traveling around the world with a movie, I would say I have 2 kids and I'm drinking at a bar, and everybody's like, what a cool dad. She says she's just as tipsy as I am. She says she has 2 kids. Everybody's like, why aren't you with your children? So she sees that and is hypersensitive to that. And in a way, this film is a reaction to that shit that she has to deal with.
No one thinks you're a cool dad. All right, let's go to the audience. Any questions y'all have?
Well, it's the classic question. Like, there's so many films where you can sense, like, oh, my subject has cancer. I'm going to Sundance. It's like the worst instincts of all documentary filmmakers, right? It's like the worst. And in this case, I honestly thought the film should stop. But that was really hard. But it was more because Tim and I were friends, and I just like, on a friend level, I was like, you can't tell me this stuff. And then you just said it while I was recording, and oh my God, that's great footage. Fuck. But I wasn't convinced. I was just basically, I didn't have either of them sign a release form until the very end of the process, because there was no way. I mean, even the secret was that Tim went to USC, actually, and for film school, and the only reason this movie exists in the world is because Tim liked my previous films and watched this and said, I will never watch this movie again. I hate it, but it's beautifully made, and you're allowed to have it. And it took a long time for him to be able to get there, So it was partly that sort of balance of like, the tragedy and like you're excited, but mostly I was just like, it doesn't matter. There's no way I'm gonna keep filming. Like I live this is like here to there is our houses. It's like there's no way out. But I mean, if you notice in the film, there, you may be able to imagine that there was a lot of fights. You don't see any fights. You don't see any like of the screaming matches. There's many nights where we could hear things going on, and it wasn't like I was like, oh, let me get my camera out. The only thing close to that is when they separate their stuff in the basement, and Thanksgiving morning. Thanksgiving morning, I felt like a creepy piece of shit. Yeah, because I was just like, because my justification, and I think I was not wrong to say, if the film is going to be basically over a year, is what we thought. Holidays are, of course, very important. So I want to film at Christmas. I want to film at Thanksgiving. I don't know what's happening Thanksgiving. Well, he's leaving. I don't know really what. You can come over and film. And I was like, okay. And then I was there, and it's just like, God, this is the worst. Like, really the worst. And afterwards, Tim and I had to talk about it, and it was just pretty awful, So there wasn't that sort. It was always gray. It was a gray area up until the moment that they finally agreed to actually make the film a legal film. Well, Brandy was with Chris for a long time. Chris was the boyfriend you don't meet, and it was going well, and then it was going not so well, and then going well again, and they were scheduled to be married, and it was then going not so well again. And I think I love them both. They're very dramatic people, both of them, and I think that it's going to be a long-term sort of question about where that's going to land. But at a time, he was living in the house and was living in Beacon and going, so I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out. Brandy's she's in a film called Slash, which you can rent on iTunes right now. She's doing a bunch of different things. She had a film written for her from a filmmaker that she met at the Sarasota Film Festival. So she's going to do that, and so things are happening, but she's not. I don't think she wants to be the kind of actor who goes and sits on the line and does the rehearsals and stuff. And she does a little bit of that, but she gave up acting for a reason, and she's realized once it was sort of presented back to her a little bit that was how she felt. Tim is married now, so as of like a month ago, and it's great. It's really great. He was pretty mad at me for a while. He never said he was mad at me. He was just tired of hearing about the movie. The movie became probably a little bit more well-known than he expected it to be. And so there was he needed some space from me, which was very understandable. But I moved away too, but he's married and happy, and so that's good. The kids are great. We visit. We have, like I said, we have children the same age, so they're friends still. Yeah, I mean, it's good. They're still in the house. Beacon still sucks. Yeah. Well, one of the most controversial things we did was I kind of was urging her into this thought that she she was basically like, I don't want to apologize for anything, and I don't want this movie to be ultimately me apologizing. So one of the reasons why that scene is the last scene is because, to me, the way it plays is that I've basically proposed this thing to her, which is, do you think the universe was telling you something? And she was like, no, that's stupid, and don't make me apologize, and I don't fucking apologize. And so she's coming to, what you see her in that last scene is sort of coming to terms with the language of how she wants to describe it herself in a way. Self-destructive is, I would only want her to answer whether she's self-destructive or not. I wouldn't pretend to be able to say that. I think she's incredibly not self-destructive in some ways. She's got incredible resourcefulness and also takes care of herself very, very much. And that part of giving up acting was a matter of taking care of herself, actually. So I don't know. I mean, that was a crazy thing to happen. And she now has she's able to admit that she was just totally blackout wasted. But I mean, the thing about getting blackout wasted when you're a parent, it has like this extra meaning to it, actually. Like when you have young children, you sort of deny yourself the ability to just lose yourself, And for me, it was always a deeper thing. It's like whatever happened, she lost herself for a moment. And there's freedom in losing yourself, actually. And I explained it to my wife. Like, I used to stay in the city. When I lived in Beacon, I would stay a night in the city, and I'd sleep on my friend's couch. And I was like, I kind of like the idea of waking up and feeling a little bit like a degenerate, like I drank too much the previous night, because I got to go home and be a dad. And I was like, I always recommend you go out and get drunk too much and fall asleep somewhere. It makes you feel refreshed a little bit, like. So like losing yourself a little bit is kind of like when you're a parent, we're trained to give up ourselves so much, And I don't know. I mean, maybe we should do that. I like that I don't give up myself entirely. I think, and my kids are fine. They seem fine so far. It's the therapy. I'll see what the therapy. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. The motivation for that was when it first happened. Ella, my daughter, who was I think 5 at the time, ran over next door like she always did, and Brandy was sitting on the stairs, I think, and she was just like, "Go away," and it was just like, "Oh shit, something happened." And then Tim came over, and the first thing he said, making a joke, innocent joke, Tim said, "I didn't do it," and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so fucked up." Like that is. Like he didn't mean, like he was just making like I didn't do it. But the fact that joke even, and it just brought to your question about likability. It's like we expect that. Like there are men that have watched this movie who have admitted to me that when that shot comes on, they think she deserved it. And I'm very thankful to have made a movie where someone can go, "Oh fuck, I actually thought that." Like that was actually my thought, And so yeah, the profundity is documentary profundity. We didn't know. I mean, we had no idea what the movie was going to end. I don't even want to list the shitty ideas I had for the way this movie could have ended. It was all pretentious and terrible, as you can probably imagine. But this was something else. Yeah. I didn't, actually, because the movie is so close to the line of reality television anyway, that anything like that would have tipped it over. And I really thought that when her explanation about the baby, changer to me was just perfect. And I just, having said stupid, dumb things to my wife before that I didn't mean, and then like you just see like how nonchalantly stupid you could be to someone you love dearly. And that pain that caused, and you could see like if you don't fix that problem, that little seed will result in the end of your marriage or your life even, and it was incredibly effective for me just to hear her say that. And the truth is that monologue, that was like a night, and we just talked for like, I was basically a little bit like probably what you're getting at, which is like, okay, I gotta know some, or at least I already knew, like Tim forgot to give her a Christmas present the previous Christmas. That was like, the fuck is going on here? Like it just, and he's not a bad guy. He's a great guy, but he's just not engaged. He's a little bit, as you saw in the movie. He's just like Brandy's an exaggerated version of herself. Tim's an exaggerated version of himself. He's that quiet. He's that standoffish. But he forgot to give her a birthday present. So I knew like the tiny little cuts, so to speak, that were there. But I knew that we didn't have anything like that for the film, and so I was like, let's just talk about it. And that's what that interview came out. And it started with, tell me about the fact that he didn't give you a Christmas present. And then, but that footage, she looks a little petty. She's like, but I didn't get a Christmas present, so I left it. No, that's not good. And then he named the restaurants without consulting her, even though, and that was something, and that was interesting. But it was it was just like these, you get the sense that it's just those tiny little things. And so I preferred that. I felt like the movie is exploitative anyway. It's just, that's what you just watched. It's something that I think that word fits. I think it's hopefully aware of it and it's using that exploitation, but anything further I feel like would be too far and would be inhumane, really. So I don't know. But it probably could have used a little bit more drama. No, well, that scene, the walking over the bridge scene, is the closest thing to a sort of secret reenactment in the film. We were driving into the city. She said, I asked him to move out. Oh, I was like, okay. Then she said, okay, so I'm going to right now I'm going to meet this guy. And I was like, well, you have fun. This project's over and I'm going to go find a friend and get drunk because I've just lost the film. Like, that's how I felt. And she went on, and then we met back up later to film what we had planned on filming, which was supposed to be the end of the night kind of thing. And then she told me this amazing story. She was like, I walked over the bridge. It was just incredible, the lights and everything. And I was just like, sounds great. I don't know what the hell to do with that. Months later, I realized that moment was crucial to everything. And so I sort of debated what to do. And I was like, well, I could have sort of secretly filmed from behind the bushes and zoomed into like the real shot of them kissing and been real creepy about it, which would have been more sort of truthful in some ways. But we just shot a sequence that was sort of like a reenactment of that moment. I hoped by that point in the movie that I would do enough signaling to you, the audience, that that's not a surprise to you, that you're watching it saying, okay, the camera's going over the bridge. I'm sort of aware of her performance and all this other stuff. Chris was actually behind the camera, and that was her friend who we just had her stand with, who was an old friend of hers, her friend who's gay and was her boyfriend in college. So it's actually perfect in so many ways, and was just there as like a stand-in for that moment. So, yeah.
But I think that's an interesting thing to sort of talk about, because I think you have strong opinions about this generally, which is that, there's people think of these lines in documentary like, well, you presented that as something real, and this is not, it's not her with him, this is not even that night, it's months later. The question of where the line is always one that if you really want to get down into the nitty-gritty of it, it gets kind of ridiculous, because if you see a movie, you might think that a movie that has talking heads in it, for example, where a bunch of people are telling you a story, is a very straightforward, more truthful, straightforward version of what a documentary should be. All of those people have been told where to sit. They have been lit. They have maybe been through makeup. They have had a whole set designed around them, possibly.
Their quotes are being cut from 5 different interviews sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
So what has changed? Maybe this is the interesting way to ask this question. Has your opinion changed of those lines from before you shot Actress to, and we don't have the benefit of everyone having seen your latest film, Kate Plays Christine, but has your opinion of where the lines are changed from before Actress to you sitting here today?
Well, I could say that there's a moment in Fake It So Real and it embodies a lot of the same sort of questions of like, when are they acting, when are they not, kind of stuff. But there's a moment where someone walks into a door and we had to sort of like shoot that out of sequence, and I felt terrible about it. I really felt terrible about it. Like, I thought like, what? We can't do that. And then we did it, and I was like, well, exactly what you said, that manipulation is no different than these other 25 manipulations that I didn't care about at all, that no other filmmakers care about. And so it became more, what the change I think was, okay, I think that the questions that brings up aren't just academic questions for my students at Missouri. Like, they're not just like, they can be used for drama. Like, this movie only really works for you if you're sucked into the question of why am I watching this, and what is the context of which I'm supposed to be watching this, which is in fact how most people watch all documentaries. Because whether you're educated with a master's in documentary media literacy or something, or you just watch reality TV, I think everyone has some inherent sort of questioning about what they're seeing. They know, okay, this is supposed to be real, but it's not necessarily real. They know that there's some sort of line there. They maybe not be able to, maybe can't articulate it, and a lot of people do get fooled by things. But there's some seed of understanding there, and I think we do a service to films and we do a service to our stories by pulling that through a little bit. And to me, that was the interesting thing. It wasn't like have the rules changed in my mind. It was like, can you use those questions that I find interesting to be dramatic questions? Can you make them, in Kate Plays Christine, the whole question, it's much more extreme. It's the questioning is meant to bring you into the psychology of the character. And here, how you read how she's behaving in this documentary setting is a metaphor for how women are looked at in all walks of life and all kinds of things. So that sort of questioning then becomes a metaphor. So to me, the lines are just there. I think when you have a camera, you have a performance. I think documentaries are always in tension between fabrication and authenticity. That's just the nature of the art form, and it's exploitable. You can burrow in there and make something interesting by playing with that very tension, which I think is the heart of the form. So it's more being emboldened by that awareness, actually, and trying shit out. I like to think I make films that, like, when you watch my films, if you get into them, you don't watch documentaries the same again. That's cool. And I don't just mean like in an academic way. I mean in like a, hopefully, it raises the awareness. Because that's how I watch Frederick Wiseman films. I mean, Wiseman says he has no acting in his films, but he also calls his films reality fictions. And I watch, Frederick Wiseman films thinking these are the greatest edited performances in the history of cinema. And that's always what I've been excited about in movies. So I'm just trying to figure out ways to get it in there.
I would encourage everyone to check out Fake It So Real and Katie with an Eye, as well as Kate Plays Christine. No matter how you feel about the films individually, I think Robert is doing something really specific and unique within the documentary form, which is to challenge the ways in which these lines exist and how performance and actual just living of life and how that is portrayed in cinema are done, and congratulations to you. Thanks for all for coming.
Thanks for staying so much, and thanks AJ for doing this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good luck out there.
Thanks for your questions.